time is it? It's bongo time! Alright, you battlers, this Pokemon Go PvP shoutcast is going to be covering the Green Bay Sinister Cup and one battler's performance throughout the 4 rounds. We will be shoutcasting the rounds of TwinToWin101. What a catchy name, right? And these matches should be very interesting for a few different reasons. TwinToWin actually describes themselves as an aspiring ace trainer. Respect. Being from Green Bay, Wisconsin, I expect nothing less. Now, TwinToWin responded that they did not use any specific or premeditated strategy for the Sinister Cup, but they did have an MVP Pokemon for their team, and that was Medicham, and they said that Psycho-Cut would pull them out of tough spots. Interesting, right? A Psycho-Cut Medicham. And the resources that TwinToWin used to prepare themselves for the tournament was PvPoke, YouTube PvP content creators, the Go Stadium Discord server, as well as something I consider a wild card, the Atticus Nair Discord server. Interesting. Shout out to you, Atticus Nair. And without having any kind of formal or informal direct PvP coaching, I think it was a very solid performance. So let's first take a look at TwinToWin's team. Okay, so we already know that TwinToWin's Medicham is going to be running Psycho-Cut. My question is, what charge moves is it going to have? Hopefully we see that TwinToWin opted for Dynamic Punch instead of Power Up Punch. Potentially, Psycho-Cut, Dynamic Punch, and then Psychic, or Psycho-Cut Ice Punch, then Dynamic Punch. I don't know. Let's see. So here's the team. Alolan Marowak, Bastiodon, Dusclops, Poliwrath, Steelix, and then the Medicham. And the opponent for round 1 is 69 Dragon Wolf 69. Such a creative name. Now, Dragon Wolf brought Claydol, Alolan Marowak, Poliwrath, Steelix, Drifblim, and Cresselia. He could potentially be running double Confusion users, as well as potentially double Shadow Ballers. So that's a pretty interesting team. But anyways, let's get right into round 1, shall we? Battlers, I think we are in for an epic treat. There's a major storm outside, you can probably hear it. But here we go. Game 1, round 1, opens up with the Poliwrath against the Steelix. The first thing I note, obviously, the Steelix is going to have Dragon Tail. This Poliwrath has, was it Bubble? I believe it was Bubble. Yeah. Bubble, Power Up Punch, and then Ice Punch, right? So I did not opt for Dynamic Punch or Hydro Pump. Just went with the classic Bubble, Power Up Punch, as well as Ice Punch. I believe at this point this could potentially be an Earthquake, so I don't think that was a bad shield by any means. TwinToWin's going to stack up the energy a little bit, so he has an Ice Punch and or Power Up Punch good to go for the next Pokemon coming in, which it looks like Dragon Wolf actually opted to bring in their own Poliwrath. Going by the namesake of TwinToWin, right? TwinToWin, is that what the whole name is about? You want to go for the mirror if you're gonna go over for a clutch victory? Okay, moving on. So we see they have Power Up Punch. TwinToWin actually goes for some Ice Punches here to do a little bit of extra damage, I guess, comparatively with Power Up Punch in the mirror matchup. Now, going for the Ice Punch, obviously, against the Drifblim in this matchup, it'd be complete nonsense to go for the Power Up Punch. Running Ice Punch and Power Up Punch is not really gonna do you many favors, I guess, unless you want to Power Up Punch just to get in more bubble damage, but I believe he's going to be fully powered up in terms of stages at this point. So he's playing this well. It looks like he invested probably a little more than he necessarily needed to with his Poliwrath against the Drifblim, but Dragon Wolf has no shields. He's not boosted, and TwinToWin here still has the Dusclops and the Steelix, so wasn't necessarily a bad choice. I don't think it was BMing either. It was just, you're going to win at that point either way. GG's game 1. Let's go to game 2. Game 2, I think TwinToWin had a pretty clean sweep for the most part. Okay, this is not good. This is not ideal. Bastiodon, get out of there. Interestingly, he actually opts to swap in for the Dusclops. I say that's interesting because we've noticed, over time and as the Sinister Cup meta has progressed and developed and grown, Dusclops can be considerably a safe switch sometimes. It depends, if they have a Hunter, maybe not, but overall I think he's kind of a safe switch. So based on the 3 that TwinToWin brought for game 2 here, I do think it was the correct decision. But he's going to be going for an Ice Punch, which I believe would have KO'd at that point, so he wants to invest in his shield to get off this Shadow Punch. Very interesting. He's trying to put on as much pressure as he can in this matchup against the Poliwrath with the Shadow Punches. I think that's the proper way to play it, especially since both Pokemon's health are going to be very low, and Dragon Wolf's going to have to make the first choice. And obviously, he's going to come back in with the Bastiodon, the wall, the monster tank in the flesh, or the stone and rock, I guess. But he ends up swapping out to Steelix, and he brought this Medicham. Okay, we know it has Psycho-Cut. Looks like he actually opted for Power-Up Punch and Psychic. Interesting. So no Psycho-Cut Dynamic Punch. He goes for the Psycho-Cut, Power-Up Punch, and then Psychic. Pretty interesting. I think personally I would have opted for Dynamic Punch on a Medicham if I were running the Psycho-Cut myself. But hey, you know what? I'm not running a Psycho-Cut Medicham. I'm not even running a Medicham. So that's not my place to say it all. He gets off the Earthquake, which that seemed to do a really low amount of damage. I guess they did not power up the move as much as they probably need to or should have to go for the KO against this Medicham. They get off another Crunch. Maybe they were trying to conserve energy to get off another Clutch Earthquake against the Bastiodon when it comes back in. It looks like it did not work out though. Going for the Stone Edge against the Drifbloom. GG's game 2. I think that's it for round 1. That's it. Let's move on. Okay, now going into round 2 here for the shoutcast on the Green Bay Sinister Cup for TwinToWin's performance. Remember, TwinToWin has Psycho-Cut on that Medicham and Power-Up Punch as well as Psychic. So the next opponent here is Rhinrox? I'm going to say Rhinrox. Yeah, let's go with Rhinrox 83. And Rhinrox brought, let's see, Bronzong. Okay. Alola Marowak, Poliwrath, Steelix, Banette, and then the Gardevoir. It's a very threatening team. It has a lot of quick, heavy hitters on that team. You know, you have a Shadow Claw user with the Banette. You have double Shadow Ball, triple Shadow Ball users potentially with the Gardevoir, Banette, and the Alola Marowak. You have a Confusion user, who's Bronzong, obviously. You got the Poliwrath, which, I mean, in the Sinister Cup, he's just Poliwrath. He can steamroll if you don't stop him. Then, of course, you have the clutch pick, Steelix. All right, round 1 for game 2. Looks like TwinToWin opts to open up with the Alola Marowak against a Bronzong. This could be very interesting. The Bronzong, as you very well may know, can carry Bulldoze, which can do massive, massive damage against the Alola Marowak being part fire typing, right? Now, he gets the shield against the Poliwrath with the Alola Marowak using the Shadow Ball before he swaps into his Steelix, which was, you know, potentially questionable. Poliwrath is, for the most part, in almost all scenarios, going to steamroll over Steelix. I think that's one of the main functioning roles of Poliwrath, but he actually ends up swapping into his Medicham here, which, as we know, does have the Psycho-Cut. So how is he going to play this out? He doesn't opt to use another shield. He'll take an Ice Punch. Is he going straight for the Psychic? It looks like he is. I think a lot of people are not aware of how quickly a Psycho-Cut Medicham is going to reach those Psychics. I think it can catch a lot of people off guard, and maybe that was, you know, kind of a mini strategy that TwinToWin had. You know, something he was counting on was the opponent's unwariness of his moveset choices. Now, that was a pretty clutch switch, as you saw from Rhinrox swapping in to the Bronzong to eat up the Psychic. It's still going to do massive damage, but at this point, TwinToWin's in a tough spot. You know, just like I said towards the beginning of this round, the Bulldoze is going to be a huge threat. You got no shields left. That's GG's. Oof. Let's go to game 2. Okay, hopefully TwinToWin can play around, you know, another potential Bronzong victory for game 2 here. He still opts to open up with the Alola Marowak. Rhinrox actually did not bring the Bronzong from what we're seeing so far. And I say that because he also has the Steelix at this point. Maybe not. This could be pretty interesting, right? So he's going for those power-up punches, obviously, in this matchup against the Steelix. I think Rhinrox is going to be a little more comfortable in this matchup at this point because the Medicham does not have the Dynamic Punch or the counter. So I think that's why Rhinrox is, you know, kind of playing this safe a little bit. Now, interesting here is he's going for the Psychic. Look how much damage that did. Even with Steelix resisting it, it just does massive, massive damage. With Psycho-Cut being so quick, he's able to reach another Psychic, which is going to be shielded with the Banette, which is smart. Banette is very, very squishy. So keep that in mind if you're thinking about using it. And that Shadow Ball is going to land, and the Shadow Ball is going to hurt very bad against the Steelix. Rhinrox has another clutch switch going straight for that built-up D-Punch against the Steelix, which just completely obliterated it. Now, obviously, we're going to be going for the Shadow Ball. That Poliwrath has to get out of here. Rhinrox still has another shield, though. I'm pretty sure it's going to be GG's here very soon for game 2. This was going to be, or I guess this was the loss in this tournament for TwinToWin. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned. Let me know what you think about these battles in this match. Let's go to the next one. All right, so it appears TwinToWin and Rhinox did opt to go for game 3. Rhinox opening up with the Bronzong against TwinToWin's Dusclops. Now, Dusclops has Shadow Punches and Fire Punches for days against the Bronzong. I think that potentially was the wrong choice to go for Shadow Punch over the Fire Punch, because I could be totally wrong on this, but it's because, I mean, Dusclops being a ghost type is going to be getting the same type attack bonus from the Shadow Punch. I'm really not sure, actually. I'm going to have to look into the stats on those two moves to see which would do more like this against the Bronzong. Interesting choices. Now he's going straight for a Shadow Punch. Very well predicted, because Rhinox brings in his Poliwrath, which so far for this tournament has done so much work for Rhinox, so he's got to deal that damage pretty quick as he realistically can with the Dusclops against the Poliwrath. Now he's got something for the Poliwrath this time, right? He's going to bring in his Psycho-Cut Medicham. Obviously Rhinox is going to swap out to the Alola Marowak, which unfortunately TwinToWin also brought in Alola Marowak, which is going to get Shadow Balled into Eternity. And he's going for a Bone Club to do a little bit of damage, because I don't think he was going to reach the Shadow Ball either. I think that was the right call. The Psychic here against the Alola Marowak. At this point though, I don't think this is looking very good at all for TwinToWin. There should be another Shadow Ball, and that's going to be GG's. That is a rough 3-0. Very GG's. Rhinox, GG's, well played. All right, round 3 for the Green Bay Sinister Cup Shoutcast over TwinToWin. The next opponent is Ricky Solicki, and Ricky Solicki's team looks a little bit like this. He brought the Medicham, okay? I'm questioning what moveset he brought with the Medicham. But then, of course, the staples, I think, is he brought Alola Marowak, Poliwrath, and Steelix. But then he opted to have a team composition of triple Ghost, which I think is interesting. It's kind of weird. So he has the Drifloon, and then he brings his own Dusclops as well. And that shirt, Ricky Solicki, is very fitting. He's got the Lickitung shirt. Props, my guy. All right, here we go. Game 1 for round 3. TwinToWin opts to open up with the Dusclops. Pretty safe for the most part, but Ricky does open up with the Poliwrath, which, you know, you got to question, is he going to be running Hydro Pump? Because that's going to be very, very bad news if that goes unshielded. Okay, so Ricky opts to swap into the Steelix. TwinToWin was very quick with his response, showing off a little bit of skill there with how quick he was to go for that Fire Punch. Very impressive. Now, it was a little bit of shield bait, right? He goes for the Crunch. It looks like TwinToWin's going for the shield baits as well at this point, going for a Crunch. Do we see a shield? We do not. So at this point in the matchup, I think it is to TwinToWin's advantage to just go straight for the Crunches. I mean, look at the Steelix's health on both sides even at this point. Just go for the Crunches. I would have liked to see, you know, a clutch Earthquake play from one of them at this point. Maybe this will be it. Do we see a shield? No, it's just another Crunch. All right, Steelix just going straight Crunch apparently, even in the mirror matchup. Interesting. Now he's going for the Earthquake at this point against the Poliwrath. Could have been clutch, but obviously we saw the shield. Now, looks like Ricky Solicki brought his own Dusclops for this match as well, and he's just going to be going for those Shadow Punches. Now, I don't want to say this is a rough spot. It's a more balanced matchup when you have a Poliwrath with Bubble Power Up Punch and Ice Punch against a Dusclops. Dusclops doesn't have any, you know, super heavy, hard-hitting moves. I think that's the disadvantage Dusclops has as a Great League pick, but he can still kind of do good work, right? Because Poliwrath, to win this matchup, is going to have to rely on those Ice Punches, and those Shadow Punches just come so quick, and they deal consistent damage with same type attack bonus from Dusclops. Looks like he lands the last Ice Punch there. He was able to get the victory against that Dusclops. And in comes Ricky Solicki Poliwrath, which is going to be using a shield against the first Shadow Punch. Interesting. So he gets off a D Punch. Questionable, maybe, against the Dusclops here. Okay, we see the Shadow Punch. We definitely should see a shield at this point. Another Dynamic Punch. Okay, so that's something to note, I guess. Is D Punch all he's going to be using? Question mark? I don't know. Let's go to game 2. All right, round 3. Game 2 looks like might be a little blurry with Ricky Solicki and TwinToWin. Okay, the blurriness went away. Good. Dusclops versus Dusclops. This is going to be a very boring mirror matchup. It's very easy to predict when they're going to be able to get to the Shadow Punch. Obviously, you want to use at least one shield in the matchup if you're going to end up being victorious for this specific matchup, at least, depending on your team composition, right? If you bring let's say a Mawile, for example, or even a Girafarig to try and mellow down the Dusclops threat. You could play it differently, but for the mirror match at least, you're going to want to use shields, okay? Now TwinToWin's getting off another Shadow Punch, which is going to deal massive damage. Unfortunately, will not get close enough to KOing to really be considerable against that opposing Dusclops. Now Ricky Soliki swaps into Drifbloom, which is going to take a Shadow Punch right away. It's actually going to take 2 Shadow Up punches. Shadow Up? It's going to take 2 Shadow Punches from the Dusclops. So obviously at this point, TwinToWin has such a huge advantage with virtually dominating in that mirror matchup for the open, and then just dominating that Drifbloom, and then having a little bit of energy left over for this Medicham to come in. That's the riskiness of Ricky Soliki's team, is having so many things that are going to be weak to ghost types on your team. Not a very threatening team composition, in my opinion. I just feel like it can be easily exploited. But there's still lessons to learn from that too, because they do have good coverage moves. So that's something to still consider with Ricky Soliki's team. Pretty hard to predict. GG's game 2. All right, round 3, match 3 here. Ricky opens up with the Dusclops again, and TwinToWin is at a little bit of a disadvantage in the open in terms of shield pressure. The Shadow Punches from the Dusclops are going to be putting massive shield pressure on with the Alola Marowak. It's kind of a disadvantage. It depends on if you successfully shield bait, or even double shield bait by actually using the Shadow Ball and having it go unshielded, which can be very clutch as well, obviously. Now he's going for a Shadow Ball at this point, which, there you go, you see it lands, the Dusclops is deleted, and Ricky Soliki's Alola Marowak is going to come in. He's going straight for the Bone Club. He doesn't want to... I'm really not sure, actually. I feel like that was kind of questionable. Maybe you should have just built up and gone for the Shadow Ball. I think what he might have been anticipating was the opposing Alola Marowak just going for the Bone Club at that point, with how low TwinToWin's Alola Marowak was on health. So that's something to consider. Now that Shadow Ball basically deleted the Dusclops. Ricky Soliki kind of gained a little bit of advantage there. He picked up his pace, but TwinToWin at this point, hands down, for the most part, is going to have the advantage with 1 shield and a Poliwrath versus Poliwrath mirror matchup. The main thing you want to consider is the moveset, right? As far as I remember, Ricky Soliki opted to include Dynamic Punch on his Poliwrath, which there it was, you saw the Dynamic Punch. TwinToWin played it correctly and opted to shield it, and we see an Ice Punch come out. Now the question is Dynamic Punch really the only thing that Poliwrath is going to be using? It's literally just a D-Punch Poliwrath. GG's to the D-Punch Poliwrath. Let's go to the final round. All right, so for the final round of the shoutcasting for the Green Bay Sinister Cup, covering for TwinToWin101, Little Duncan Owl. I love that name. It's so cute. It just sounds cute. It's like if a Noctowl bought a Dunkin' Donuts franchise and then became a rapper. Little Duncan Owl. We're not going to name off or go over their team again. They literally have copy-paste the same team as the previous opponent. My question is, are we going to see different movesets being run on these Pokemon? Hopefully we do. Hopefully it's not going to be just Dynamic Punch on the Poliwrath. Let's find out. Let's get into this final round. Starting off for game 1 here against Little Duncan Owl for the final round with TwinToWin. Okay, they open up with the Steelix, which is going to be very threatening with that crunch damage against the Dusclops. But that's a good thing about Dusclops, right? He has the Fire Punch. He's a Fire Ghost boy. Not really. That's a Alola Marowak. But anyways, cringe. Now we have a Steelix swap in, which I think was potentially a questionable play. You're going to want to build up to those Earthquakes. And unfortunately, from the looks of things, this Poliwrath also has Dynamic Punch. So this Poliwrath is basically the hardest counter you can have right now for the Sinister Cup meta against the Steelix. Does massive, massive damage. Look at that. It deletes Steelix. Eats it for lunch. Now he's coming back in with the Dusclops, which again, as we talked about previously, for this tournament shoutcast is going to be kind of a neutral coverage, kind of a medium, I don't want to say soft counter, kind of a medium to soft counter against Poliwrath, unless it's running Hydro Pump, right? Now he's coming in with this Steelix. He has saved his Poliwrath for this. The Poliwrath's going to have a good time. It's going to go straight for the Power-Up Punch. Get a little boost going up against the Steelix. Do we see an Earthquake? We do. Ouch. That is very much pain. That's going to hurt. That's going to hurt a lot against the Poliwrath. And unfortunately, it looks like Lil Duncan Owl has the Dusclops sitting in the back there with full health against this Poliwrath. So that is not ideal. Game 1 is not looking good at all for TwinToWin101. I don't remember how much energy is built up at this point. This next Shadow Punch from Lil Duncan Owl should not KO. We should be able to get to... No, we can't. GG's. That's GG's. Oof, Lil Duncan Owl. Let's go. GG's game 1. Let's go to game 2. All right, I believe this should be game 2 for the final round. TwinToWin opens up with his Psycho-Cut Medicham against a Dusclops, which is not very ideal at all. I think he should have probably gone for the shield bait with the sidekick against the Dusclops, but you know, it's questionable. It's hard to predict what a Medicham with Psycho-Cut is going to do or what moves it's going to opt for. That's why I think it's a very interesting pick. Let me know if you have utilized Psycho-Cut Medicham at all, even in practice or in your actual Sinister tournaments. I would like to hear more about it to see if it's been very clutch for anybody else, really. I'd like to hear more about a Psycho-Cut Medicham, because I suck with it. I'm bad. I'm bad with a Psycho-Cut Medicham. Believe me, I've tried. Now, this matchup, again, this can be fairly neutral. I think Dusclops gained popularity ever since people started opting for Dynamic Punch as one of the staple charge moves for a Poliwrath against the Sinister Cup meta. He can just eat up those deep punches. Deep punch will still do massive damage, you know, even if it's not going to be doing much damage overall in terms of typing against the Dusclops in the matchup, but it's still very threatening. Deep punch does massive damage, especially with Poliwrath. Unfortunately, it looks like that buildup of energy was kind of wasted because their Dusclops is going to come back in and just delete them. And then it's going to be GG's to this Medicham here from that Shadow Punch. Now, this Steelix, this is beautiful. The Steelix is at full health. There's another Steelix at full health coming in. No shields on both Steelixes. There'd be absolutely no reason to go for a crunch right now. Just get off the Earthquake and go for a crunch again, I believe, after this to close the victory. Maybe. This will be very close. Now, I'm pretty sure this crunch is going to KO. Yeah. KOs are either just took one more Dragon Tail. GG's. This is it. The final game. The final battle. We open with what we closed with last time. Steelix versus Steelix. You're going to want to build up enough energy to go for that Earthquake, to go for a proper shield bait. Going for the crunch. Ooh, that's beautiful. We actually do see a shield being used by that opposing Steelix. And it looks like Lil Duncan Owl opts to swap out from the Steelix v Steelix matchup into their Poliwrath. I don't believe, I didn't catch that just a second ago, but I would have assumed he would have swapped into the Medicham. Maybe he did not bring it this time because he's opting to go for the kind of medium to soft counter with the Dusclops versus the Poliwrath. Yeah, the deep punch. You know, look at that. It's going to be not very effective, but being fairly spammy against a not very effective matchup, it still just does so much damage. Maybe Dynamic Punch is the way to go. I don't know. I'm still not 100% convinced on running Dynamic Punch on the Poliwrath. That's just, you know, my thoughts, my feelings. Completely subjective. That's just 100% my opinion. But they're bringing out the Steelix. Luckily, TwinToWin was smart. They have conserved their shields. They do not opt to use another shield at this point, which probably was smart. The Dragon Tail will do good damage. Now we see the Medicham. Okay. So you actually did bring Medicham for this last round. Interesting to see that you did not opt to swap into the Medicham earlier to go for that sidekick against the Poliwrath. I don't know. You know, you have your strategy planned out. With what we're witnessing here, we're now able to get off a sidekick against the Dusclops, which is still going to do massive damage, as well as the Shadow Punch against Medicham is very threatening as well. But here's the beauty of it. I think this is what you wanted to do. He's going for the sidekick for the TKO against the Dusclops, and that Poliwrath is almost completely gone, but he is able to get off the deep punch. But Steelix is still sitting in the back. Wow. Very well played. That is it for the tournament. TwinToWin. Well played. I want to know what you battlers think about using a Psycho-Cut Medicham as a pick for the Sinister Cup. But I think it's interesting. Psycho-Cut Medicham, as we've seen, can be potentially very clutch. The question is, what is the best way to use a Psycho-Cut Medicham? Personally, I would still not opt to run Psycho-Cut. We saw that it is usable. It's definitely not useless. I just feel like I'm sacrificing more coverage and opportunities from a counter Medicham than I would rolling into a Psycho-Cut Medicham. To me, It just doesn't make sense. And again, you know, that's just me. I'm bad with the Psycho-Cut Medicham. I've tried and I've failed. But GG's to the Green Bay Sinister Cup, and GG's to TwinToWin101, and also very GG's to Mr. Drums BK, who was the tournament victor. If you'd like to see the tournament results, I'm going to put the link right down there below. And as always, GG's to the battles and GG's to the video because it's over. As always, if you enjoy, subscribe if you feel my vibe, and power up the notification bell for all the PvP content. That's it for this shoutcasting video. We'll see you all in the next video. You battlers, take it one battle at a time and have a good freaking day.